Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. It's slightly earlier than usual. I was a bit tied up with something else earlier. So yeah, we're going to try and repeat from last week without the technical difficulties. It turned out I just needed to restart the router. Actually, it wasn't the Windows update or anything.
Welcome to another.
So it seems sometimes, I don't know, very hot weather might have caused that. You know, maybe it was remembering a bad route or something. Anyway, who knows? So yeah, I wanted to look at Richard Reti against Alexander Alekhine. That was the first game. Let's have a look at that with Alekhine's perspective. So G4 from Richard Reti, and Alekhine, yeah, it's hypermodern. So they're both considered hypermodernists. So the hypermodernists believe that the centre could be controlled from afar. You know, for example, fianchettos. You can control the four central squares from afar. So it's a good test of this hypermodern opening. And Richard Reti beat Capablanca famously with the white pieces with the Reti knight f3. But this is G3. It's still in hypermodern style. But of course, knight f3 is Reti's move. One knight f3. So let's see. E5. We have now the provocative knight f3, kind of reverse Alekhine defense. So Richard Reti being very, very provocative here. And we have E4. So knight D4, D5. And this is a very, very common theme if you play the Alekhine defense. And it's with a tempo up. And often you can play openings with white that are actually designed with black, because you've got the extra tempo, right? And actually at this point I would say, you know, white's okay. E takes, queen takes has achieved a nice position actually from this opening. There's a prospect of putting pressure on the centre and also maybe breaking down the diagonal later. Could be subject to extra pressure once that fianchetto is in place. We see knight f6, bishop g2. Now this is a really interesting decision as well actually. We see bishop b4 check. So perhaps already Alekhine's kind of intuitively thinking that if white is going to be strong on the light squares because of that fianchetto, then maybe his chances should be inferior on the dark squares. And actually with this check, it's a nuisance. Let's actually put on a bit, so just in case I say a whole load of tactical nonsense, and it wouldn't be as smooth then, would it? So let's see. And also I'm going to check live book as well. This move, bishop b4 check, already actually this position I'm pretty sure is a really unusual position. It really is. We've gone off the beaten track. So anyway, bishop b4 check. We have the bishop interposing, but I want to keep a positional train of thought here. Now, with these bishops coming off, both white and black are weaker on the dark squares. But just bear in mind, you know, the dark squares that bishop is a guardian of, kind of. So we're taking that off. Knight takes d2. Black castles, and now this attacking the centre in true hypermodern tradition. And remember, this bishop's still at c8, so there's some annoying pressure on the diagonal. It's handled with a tactical solution, actually, because I think something like c6 leaves white with a really comfortable position. Although it seems to blunt the bishop, I think white's really just quite comfortable here. It's annoying amount of pressure, but there's a tactical solution used, which is knight a6, with the idea of gaining a key tempo to be able to take on d5. And in fact, white allowed this exchange of d5 for a knight, because maybe he felt there's still an annoying pressure now. And in fact, these knights are pretty good. You know, maybe knight c5 as well later. There seems to be a lot of pressure on black at the moment. c6, white castles, rook e8, rook fd1. We have bishop g4 now. So yes, it looks as though there's some pressure on e2, but rook d2 is both defending and potentially on the assault later, doubling rooks on that d file. We have queen c8, which is actually trying to undermine white's king safety a bit. If we can exchange off that fianchettoed bishop, then white's king's going to be less safe. And now we see knight c5. At this point, I think white's absolutely fine. What do you guys think? I hope you can, if you want to say, just, I won't wait, but if you want to say if you think at this point move 16, you know, I think white's fine here. But we have bishop h3, and white is a bit conscious of his king safety. He avoids this exchange, and we have now trying to get it here. Yep, and now bishop h1, a bit of a concession. And now really, this is all part of, this might look like a hack attack move, this next move, but it's all part of a dark square campaign started with that bishop b4. Very coherent dark square campaign here, because white is actually, it's got a lot of pressure on light squares, but you might find this surprising h5, because look, we're already looking at e3 with a couple of pieces. We can undermine this pawn chain. A, that's going to weaken king safety, and B, it's weakening dark squares fundamentally as well. And actually, you know, with the fanciful knight not on f3, of course this kind of stuff is more possible. Of course, if there was a guardian knight on f3, this kind of undermining operation wouldn't be so hot. But here it seems entirely justifiable. White plays on the queen side here with b4. Let's see if he tries to stop h4. Yeah, maybe queen c7, and we, yeah, it's plausible to play knight f3, the defensive move, but white goes on the offensive on the queen side. He wants this knight to participate in sort of breaking down the barriers on this diagonal, so there's a kind of minority attack, minority of pawns attacking a majority of pawns with support of a central knight and the fianchetto bishop. So it looks like a fairly delicious minority attack. What can go wrong with the minority attack? What can go wrong here? Well, first of all, black can try and slow down the minority attack, and he does so with a6. It would seem, you might think, well, what about a4? That wasn't played actually. Rook c1 was played. Let's have a look at a4, trying to pursue this minority attack. I think that would be okay. I think that's an okay move. And yeah, even if it's not b5, a5 might be handy as well, just to get a grip on the dark squares. But there's a minority attack possibility. Yeah, I think that move a4. But this is also, you know, e4 is also interesting. So here, I think white enjoys a pleasant position here. Okay. So anyway, rook c1 is played. So even more pressure is brought to bear. I guess that rook, if this, you know, this is not going to happen with the dissuasion of this rook on a8 looking at a1. So it's still, in a way, you know, a4, b5 is on the cards. So black's got to react quickly here. I think Alekhine senses that there's definitely a small window of opportunity in this game. Otherwise, he's going to be run over with the minority attack here, because a4, b5 is undermining his whole position. It's not just about structural damage. We're talking about this loose knight on d5, for example. I'll throw in a few moves just to see the urgency here. Let's imagine a few token moves. What does white do? Let's just check that this is a plausible plan. Yeah, this is a plausible plan to aim for, and then sort of smashing down. Okay, if white has a few moves, he would like to do that. Yeah, I just wanted to I just wanted to validate that. Okay, but anyway, so black has a certain window of opportunity. He has to generate some counterplay quickly, otherwise he could be getting run over. So he plays h4. Harry the h pawn, as some attacking players in the UK, like Simon Williams, have used, but others as well. Harry the h pawn is being used in this classic immortal game. Funny enough. So is it anti-positional? Is white the one that's playing all this cool positional play? Should white deserve to win this position? Yeah? You might want to answer that in your own time. So anyway, a4. So white's clearly the positional player in this game is Richard Reti. He's going to come in with b5 soon, or even e4 might be useful. Got to think about that as well. e4. So anyway, black plays hg, hg. I mean, seriously, in a game, if you think the opponent's got a lot of pressure on light squares, maybe that is a logical thing to look for dark square counterplay. And here, yeah, this next move is about dark square counterplay. Queen c7. It's eyeing dark squares like g3. And black has got that semi-open file. You might think that's useful at some point. The minority attack plugs away. b5. Is this going to be carnage for Alexander Alekhine? He takes, giving him an active rook. Is that a bit pedantic? There's no entry points of the rook. Some middle game commentators have sometimes said if there's no entry points, it's not that worth it. But here, yeah, it's doesn't seem any harm in having that theoretical road of activity. But here is the first stunning, really cute move of the game, which does reflect a large dose of dark square counterplay. So black to play, what would you play here? 200 points, if you can guess it. You might not have seen this game before. So a large dose of dark square counterplay is coming now in this position. Giles Capablanca on stream says, in such a game, attack on the opposite sides. The best first punch wins, and deservedly so. I like that, because your comment is not biased to the positional player or the tactical player. You're saying the one that lands the first punch. That sounds like a street fight. Maybe this game is just a street fight. You're right. It's the hardest punch first. So anyway, yeah. So black to play here. There's two interesting moves on dark squares. Remember, all of these, yeah, look at that pawn chain. It's down to 2, so is black's. But he plays a stunner, rook e3. On a dark square, yeah? No coincidence on a dark square. Immediately threatening. Rook takes g3 is the immediate threat. Just to show, you know, if b takes, this wasn't played. Rook takes g3, dark square disaster. Yeah, if here, queen takes g3, and you might think, well, defending, isn't it? No, dark square entry on e3, hitting the queen, hitting g2. What's positional play got to do with this position? White might have succeeded in the minority attack, but is lost. His king is just coming off the board. He's lost here, so that's the threat. And hold on a sec, what about bishop g2? Well, in that case there's knight e3, which does something quite clever. Bishop h3, and this is lost because rook takes g2, rook g1, double check, dark square disaster, queen g3, queen g2. So yeah, this represents a very real threat of rook takes g3. You might think, hold on a sec, what about king h2? This might be one of the better moves, king h2, actually, to consider. Might be. I'm not sure there's anything spectacular against king h2. But bishop f3 might be a way to parry the pressure And black here seems technically okay, because there has been some concession with white's structural ambitions that yeah, things have been kept on hold. This is can't ever take here because of the check, and then if here knight e3 is mate, and if king h1, then knight takes e3, forking g2 and c4. So yeah, so it's in balance in this position on that that bishop f3. It's almost in balance, but in the game we see knight f3, so the knight retreats, right? And now a mockery is made of white's, template positional plan. A mockery is made of it, yeah, because black says to white, well, what if I take this to gain a tempo? I don't care about these pawns. I'm going to dissolve them. I think there's a structural attack. I'm just going to get rid of all my pawns. Okay, and put your queen on b5 for a tempo, an evil tempo. So the queen is put on b5. There might not be anything better than queen take. Well, actually there might be. Queen d4 might be the best move. But no. White wants to take here and prove that he's smashing down the diagonal. The structural attack, the positional player's favourite theme, surely should be logically triumphant in this game. Well, actually, there are two weapons. The other one, the first one is to identify if the opponent's playing on the light squares, you play on the dark squares. The second one, if you're under structural attack, the tactician weapon is basically to look for key tempos. This c takes b5 is a lust for gaining key tempo, which is knight c3 here. So forget about the structure. There's key tempos here, and it's actually white's king, which could feel the impact soon. So white wins his pawn on b7. He's succeeded in breaking down the diagonal, but at what cost? Isn't e2 dropping off? We have queen takes b7, knight takes, and e2 drops off. This is a big downside, isn't it? King h2, but hold on a sec. Aren't a lot of pieces for black? Well, isn't the rook? Doesn't the rook need to move? So this position requires, I believe, some accuracy. A casual move is not going to give black much here. A casual move, you might think, like bishop takes f3, is fine for white. Yeah, if we take here, that's absolutely fine for white. So that's not going to cause any headaches. You might think, well, what about rook takes f3? Now, in the event of this, then that's okay for black. That's good. But rook takes f3 interrupted e2, so we just out on e2. And if rook takes g3, this position is not good enough either. It's only a pawn up for black. It's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be a lot of work to win that, if that is winnable at all, which is doubtful. So Alekhine again in this position with his rook on e3. He starts to create. I've got a book with the final position of this game. This wonderful aesthetic position. Yeah. Now with knight e4, it's starting to be wonderfully aesthetic, weird and interesting, because of the jumble arrangement of the pieces here. Yes, it is to do with just pure tactics, really. Why can't the rook be taken, you might ask? Well, if the rook's taken, then here knight takes d2, not bishop takes f3, knight takes d2, and then we're also going to win this one, so we're winning there with the exchange up. And if so what else does white do? It's another key tempo, basically. Knight e4, it's a key tempo game. So white plays a good move, it seems, one of the best technical moves. Rook c4. But now the threat on the rook is extinguished with knight takes f2, taking away that threat on the rook. And yeah, we're getting a real jumble of pieces here emerging, just aesthetically, by the way. It's strange that this occurred. What is black actually threatening? Well, one threat is bishop e6 at the moment. So anyway, bishop g2, bishop e6 is played, hitting the rook. Another key tempo gain. So there's quite a lot of key tempo gains by Alexander Alekhine in this game, which is important for any tactical players that want to work on the dark squares. Should note this game. So if you're subject to minority attack, this is a classic example of how to put up some resistance. So check, yeah, but the king's safety has been severely compromised here, and this previously, this theoretical A file is not theoretical anymore, because actually, rook a1 check is mating in this line. Now, the reason I mentioned that as an aside, I remember one middle game book. It was a bit patronising because it knew the result of this game. This GM beat this IM, and this IM had apparently this token rook. The rook's not token here, is it? It really depends on the position, the tactics. So it's lethal here, this rook. So in other words, that AB was actually pretty sensible in retrospect, wasn't it? Because it activated a rook. Even just in a theoretical sense, just because there's no entry points doesn't mean it's of zero value. You see, you get these books trying to tell you that it's not of zero value, is it? As this demonstrates, king h1, rook a1. So the king's having to go in the firing line. Pretty big dire consequence of a horrible discovered check here. So we have knight e5 check. Now, if the king goes to h4, then this is a mate in 6 with check, check, and the fastest mate is check, 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 and mate. Yeah. So king h4 is probably a bad idea. So the king goes back to h2. But now we have rook takes f3. And clearly, well, not clearly, let's have a look. This one goes into a fork, basically. Fork. But actually, even better than taking, well, that's good enough. Because then it's just black's piece up. So we have rook takes e2. Check. And again, this holds that the king can't step on the back row. The king goes again for this horrible discovered check again. Knight e3 check. And now Alexander on the cannon, he takes on c2. And we get this corker transition to a final fork after all these forcing moves. White resigns here because he's going to be in a fork at the end of this. He resigned here. If he plays rook f2, knight takes f3, rook takes f3, bishop d5, and there's not even a way to protect the knight on b3. Yeah. So there you go. So, I don't know, you could say minority attack refuted, dark square play, tempo gains. What's the worry of sustaining a minority attack? So anyway, the game actually, I think it ended on knight d4 actually, not what I've just showed you. So yeah, it's tactics versus positional play. The positional player, in carrying out any structural plan to damage your pawn structure, may be subject to tempo gain and counterplay on the other squares which they're trying to undermine, as this game shows. Okay, so I hope you got something from that game. Let's have a look at another game. And also, you see, those people that don't understand my H-pawn attacks, you're in a much better position to understand now. It's clearly part of a grand dark square strategy, as you can see from this game. Yeah, which, you know, so the H-pawn attacks are fully justifiable, especially in internet blitz chess. It totally makes sense. Yeah. So let's have a look at Adams-Torre, Carlos Torre. So Edwin Ziegler Adams against Carlos Torre Repetto. Now, I've probably butchered all the pronunciation there. But I never said I was a linguist, right? So, yeah. Okay. Actually, Adams is Adams, right? It's hard to sort of mispronounce Adams, surely. Anyway, but this other one, Repetto, is that? There's no pronunciation help. So anyway. Nope, there isn't. Who is Repetto? Repetto was born in Merida. He's in Mexico. He learned to play chess at 6. 1915, he went to the United States to prove himself against America's best players. At the Moscow 1925 tournament, that was 5 years after this game, Torre placed 5th, winning his individual game against Emanuel Lasker. Oh no, there's a sad story here. His chess career ended prematurely when he was stricken by mental illness a few years later. But in 1977, FIDE awarded him the International Grandmaster title based on his results in the mid-1920s. So Torre was the first Mexican to ever achieve this title. So actually, now Adams is... there's not much said of Adams by contrast, and there's only 2 games in the database of Adams. So let's have a look at this game. So E4, let's take white's position, E5, knight F3, D6, D4, and this is a passive Ponziani, isn't it? Which is very unpopular nowadays. No, it's not Ponziani. What am I talking about? Philidor, sorry, I only got the first letter correct. So Philidor defense, yes, Philidor defense. So knight C6, bishop B5, and that's snapped off. Knight C3. White enjoys a grip on D5 here, and already probably a small edge from this Philidor position. So here, bishop E7. White plays now knight D5. Yes, warning. This might have been analysis. Yeah, warning. I don't want to mislead. Okay, bishop takes D5. E takes. Black castles. Bishop G5. C6, C4, getting to the critical moment. C takes, rook E8, rook Fe1, A5, and white has the more comfortable position and does something which seems quite logical to double rooks on that E file. We have rook C8 and the rooks double. Seems perfectly logical to do this. Technically, white's actually in very good shape by now. Yeah, I think black's been messing around too much. Sorry, black's been messing around too much. After this, he should have done something about this doubling and his back row. He should have played H6. H6 should keep equality. Just for the record, should keep equality. Because then any time white doubles, you know, I think we can even play... Can we even play that? Maybe. Yeah, I think we can even play that. And just release this E-file pressure. But no, we don't have black releasing that E-file pressure. The rook's double. Queen D7. And now, it looks as though, well, everything's going to come off, right? Bishop takes F6. Bishop takes F6. But unfortunately for black, if this was a real game, which I'm not sure it was, white has a stunning move here, which maybe many of you have seen before. So the back row is weak. This is all about the back row, this game. The back row. there's no air for the king, the luft. There's no luft that's been created. That variation I showed you of h6, that would have created some luft on h7. There's no luft. So in this luftless position, guess what white can play. White play in this luftless position. White play. Any ideas? Some of you haven't seen this game before. That's cool. That's an added bonus. Okay. There's only one person makes... okay, no, you're hitting on it now. Now, not queen c4, because black doesn't have to play rook takes c4, you know? It's like when you under-promote to a knight. The opponent might not take the knight. They might check and then win the game. If you do something unusual, you know, the opponent doesn't have to fall in compliance with, you know, your evil plan. No, their job is to be as rebellious as possible. After queen c4, rook takes e2 is possible, yeah? Yeah, and that's not funny, is it? Because actually, this position is quite good for black. Not winning, but it's an edge for black. He's got no problems here. He's created luft. The diagonal, the bishop looks good. The c-file looks good. So queen c4 doesn't work out well. The only way it works out is rook takes c4 on compliance, complicity, which is not what's going to happen. Okay, against strong player. So we have queen g4 instead, trying to drag the queen like this. And it factors in the fact that rook takes e2 isn't a back row on white, because white's got no heir either. But the thing is, the knight holds e1, so we can take the queen here and be winning this, right? So the queen actually this is a disturbing queen move now, because if rook d8, we could just take on d7. The back row's weak, you know, takes mate, yes. So the back row's weak, so the queen goes to b5. But now in this position, guess what here? White play here for like 200 points. This is like drag and drop tactic. My good friend Kostas Karanis described these kind of tactics as drag and drop. You wanna like program the opponent's pieces. You wanna like drag and drop them. You know, like drag and drop in IT. You wanna drag and drop the opponent's pieces with these tactics. So you know. Drag and drop, mega drag and drop tactic now is played. 200 points if we find this, so we've seen it before. Queen c4, so both ways is impossible. You know, if the queen takes, it's holding e8, yeah. So we take on e8, and it's like mate. Okay, so we've proven that we can't do that. Either way, we can't take, because that one also loosens e8 weakness of the last move, fatal weakness over the last move in both cases. So the queen goes back to d7, but now there's another mega drag and drop tactic. So this is getting more intense. The drag and dropicity of these moves is on the increase. Yeah, white really wants to program the black pieces here. You know, white to play. Yeah? White to play here. So another mega drag and drop tactic is played. Which the engine, by the way, this is all engine approved. I'll say if it's not. Yeah, this top clinical choice. These guys knew how to play or analyze either So no, not queen takes c8, because the rook plays rook takes c8 and we're still controlling e8. No. Mega drag and drop. So you want to like program the opponent's pieces. You want to like be the puppeteer for the opponent's pieces. You know, the puppeteer, yeah, is like drag and dropping the opponent's pieces. Yeah. So we want to weaken e8. We want to weaken e8 somehow. No, we're not going back to g4, because then we just repeat. You know, black's going to repeat. It's going to be a threefold repetition at this rate. Yeah, he's controlling e8. He's established he can hold e8 here from b5. So no, white plays a mega drag and drop tactic. Queen c7, going into c7. Unwelcome visitor. However, black is not compelled to take that. He goes to b5. And it looks as though actually that, well, has white made any progress here? I have to say, I have to say, I might. This is pretty tricky stuff now. This next move, what white's play here, it's pretty tricky if you haven't seen the game before. So white's play here, it is very pyrotechnical is a word I sometimes have heard used for very technical stuff, or just very highly technical move. White is a very highly technical move here, which is kind of drag and drop territory. The difference from before is that we've now got pressure on e8 and c8, right? We've got pressure on two squares. So is our queen actually in the optimal position? Or not yet? Now, if you've said queen takes b7, you lose unfortunately. Not just the game, but 2,000 points penalty there, sorry. no, okay, maybe just 200 points. Because black can exploit white's lack of luft in this position with, so not just non-complicity, but outright destruction of white's position here. Yeah? Outright destruction. Black has a completely crushing move here. Can you guess black crushes white here? With so the beautiful mathematical thing about this game is that actually, you know, black has pressure points on c1 and e1, funny enough. Not only white has pressure points on e8 and c8, but the reverse mirror image is also true in this position. The pressure points are on both sides, and in fact they share a lot of the same. These are sharing the same downsides. There's no air for either player. They're actually literally sharing the same downsides of the position. And so the mathematics of the tactics of the mirror imaging, if we're sharing the same downsides, there's the same sort of drag and drop stuff going on to exploit a weak back rank here. Queen takes e2 is a drag and drop move. Bang! End of game. Because check, and whatever, check, and mating. So that's not how the game ended, because white didn't play queen takes b7. So we've established a little bit more about this story, maybe, that should be emphasized. Yeah, there's mirror imaging of the downsides here. a4 is the move. a4, otherwise you'll never get it. It's a really tricky move. a4. What does it really mean? The queen is literally stopping black's control of c1 here. So this queen takes e2 is not working because the queen's in the way. We have time for rook takes, and neither rook can take here. You know, we take that one. If we take that one. That's not working, right? That's the first point. Queen takes e2 is not working. So what the heck is the point of a4? And yes, it is the top engine move. What the heck, you might wonder, is the point of a4? Well, one point is, given that queen takes e2 is not working, where does the queen go? If the queen, say, goes to c5, we just take on e8. The queen's got to keep guard on e8. But yeah, both sides share vulnerabilities here. Yeah. We have what seems to be the only move now. Queen takes a4, clinging on to e8. And this next move is starting to really put the pressure on. Now this next move, so white to play here. What does white play in this position? So we've got pressure at the back. We've accumulated pressure on the tactical points c8 and e8. With queen a4, what is the point? You're all lost on this, aren't you? I'm glad some of you haven't seen this before. You might not see the point of this at all. Yeah, I thought it's pretty tricky going over this again. I really did think this is amazingly tricky, and this is hard for anyone to find, this whole combination. But this next move is also a little bit, you might not see the point of it at all. So there's suggestions for queen takes b7 or queen c6. I'm glad we can have other little sub-stories here, like a Stephen King novel. Okay, so let's have another sub-story. Okay, so if queen c6, so that's a clever idea, you know, to block. Unfortunately, there is a big, you know, refutation of this. Yeah. Because, yeah, if complicity, is that what you're after? Yeah, then sure, you know, and sure, if complicity. But if you're playing a stronger player, what they do in this position is just play queen takes c6. Unfortunately, it's holding e8, so there's no time for this, and basically this is really bad because we've just lost 2 pawns. With 2 pawns down here, it's a lost position. So not queen c6. Good idea. And you might think, well, what about queen takes b7? Because at least doesn't that hold up? The good thing about queen takes b7, it's not totally losing instantly. It is a playable move in this position. But apart from that, there's nothing much going on for it. Queen takes a5, for the record, might actually be a tiny advantage for white. No, but there's a killer move here. There's a killer move. Killer. Can you all see it? Alright, it is pretty forcing. And that move is rook e4. Now the funny thing about rook e4 is, well, because there's no time for this because we take there and we've got e8 covered now. There's no time for anything really apart from moving the queen here. Because if we take here, again we get this situation where the queen can't be taken, the rook can't take. So white c1 and e1, they're not an issue here. So the queen now goes to b5. Okay. And the final move of the game, can you guess? The final move of the game where black cannot cling on any further after this move to a certain key square. It's funny because that rook move wasn't just a forcing move. It gave that subtle little perk that queen takes e2 is no longer on the cards, is it? So it gave that subtle little perk, didn't it? Because remember that horrible variation of queen takes e2? So yeah, it did something quite subtle. But now black is, if black had another move, he'd probably want to move his rook or put the bishop in the way. But anyway, it's white to move here. The final killer drag and drop tactic, I'm hoping you can all shout out now, is, yeah, you must be able to work this out now, surely. Yeah, given that there's no queen takes e2, we can safely play queen takes b7. Yeah, and the queen cannot hold on, funny enough, to e8, because another great benefit of this rook e4, it's that really is the authority of centralization, a centralized piece, that it's stopping, this centralized piece is stopping the queen clinging on to e8, because if queen a4, yeah, the rook's got that covered, we can take here and we're not getting back romated. So that central rook is handling queen a4. So this is the final move of the game. This is the final overload. We've kind of checkmated the black queen. Yeah, the queen's dropping off. The queen's got nowhere to hide. If the queen goes onto a dark square, we just take on e8. You know, if the queen takes on here, well, it's just ridiculous. Rook takes e8. The queen's got nowhere to hide. The hiding place has disappeared because of this centralized rook. Agree? There's no defense here, is there? Is there? No. No, there's no defense here. So in this classic, this is probably analysis, it says on chessgames.com. Unfortunately, it's probably analysis, right? And the stronger player, for the record, must be, we must assume, Adams-Torre is the first Mexican grandmaster. So if he had his hand in the script writing for this game, he's incredibly resourceful. I would say it's the player with the black pieces that was the resourceful one in creating this amazing bit of analysis. I do not believe, well, okay, no, probably Edward Winter's got the story. But anyway, it's an amazing bit of analysis, really. It survives the test of, the top engines. It's all the top moves. In that sequence, it was all the top, engine moves. So remarkable. Because this was 1920, this bit of analysis. 1920. Incredible. Survived the test of scrutiny. Okay. I'm glad we got no technical issues today. So for future reference, I'll check no Windows updates, restart the router. It should be okay, like today. Anyway, I'm going to go now before there is a technical problem. So hope you enjoyed this session. See you next week. Remember to thumbs up the video, and thanks very much. Cheers then.